Hello and welcome to this special series of episodes called 29 Days of Magic. During Black History Month, the month of February, I'll be interviewing a Black woman a day who's from business and entrepreneurship. You name it, I'm going to have a chat with her. The idea for this is to show off the amazingness of Black women throughout various industries. I hope you take a listen, like, share, review, and be inspired by these incredible stories. Take a listen. Hello and welcome to this episode of the Reset Podcast. I'm your host, Laura Miel, CEO of the cultural communications agency D-Flash. Each episode, I bring on amazing entrepreneurs, business leaders, and people just doing the damn thing. And as part of Black History Month, I am running a wonderful campaign called 29 Days of Magic, where I interview amazing Black women who I know, don't know, who fall into my lap and just have awesome stories to tell. And so I'm so excited to have Barry, who is the creator of Podcast in Color. And she is an OG in the industry of podcasting and has just spent so much time tirelessly advocating for podcasters of color. And so it will be a great conversation. Take a listen. Hey, Barry.
Hey.
How's it going?
It's going okay. You know, considering the times, it's going okay.
May the 2021, step one. And now that we're in a brand new year, the podcast does not change. So Barry, what was your first job?
My first job was a busser, a cleanup person at my uncle's barbecue restaurant. It was called the Lynx at City Park, and then it changed to Sam Taylor's Barbecue. And basically, it was just cleaning up so I'd have money to eat food from his restaurant. And that's how that all started.
Wait, where was this?
It was only 2 blocks from my house. There's a golf course that's just a couple of blocks from my house. So basically, I would always walk up there, and I knew, I'm one of those people that have always loved food. So I knew exactly how much my sandwich cost. I would have it to the penny and all of that.
To the penny?
And then it would be sometimes I go up there oh my gosh, let me just see if I can get my uncle to buy me the sandwich instead of me paying for it, or one of my cousins or something. And then he would just end up putting me to work. You bust a couple of tables, I'll buy the sandwich and that kind of thing.
So yeah, you did the work for the food. I mean, I don't see an issue with this. This is what you have to do, especially when you're a teenager. You're a broke teenager. What else you gotta do? I see no issue here.
What do I need to do?
Exactly, which also I think kind of dovetails well into how Podcast in Color is the go-to resource for Black podcasters. So how did we go from getting the exact change for that sandwich to Podcast in Color? What's that journey been like?
I feel like it's just because, of course, I guess podcasting maybe existed back then. It's just a lot of people didn't know about it. But mostly it's just been a journey of customer service, learning different jobs, how can I apply those jobs, and going through with it. And I feel like that prepared me for Podcast in Color because I'd never, thought about creating my own business and that kind of thing. I have my real estate license and I literally don't use it. My dad's a real estate agent. And I just don't like the whole sales part of things. And I'm always I don't want to work for myself. I'd rather go do a 9 to 5 for somebody else and then just be able to come back home and not think about it. But Podcast in Color came out of so it's not going to exist. So nobody's going to do this. I mean, I'm on the internet a lot already. Maybe I should just try. And it's been that ever since.
So basically, I'll get on the internet and we'll see what happens.
Exactly. And it's been a journey from there.
So why don't you tell the audience what Podcast in Color is and how it serves amazing customer service?
Well, Podcast in Color, it is a lot of different things right now. But first of all, podcastincolor.com, it is a directory of podcasts of color all over the world. And that's on any type of subject. So a lot of people usually find pop culture and gossip type podcasts. And so I just want people to know that there are podcasts like this. There's podcasts on food. There's podcasts on wine. There's podcasts on anime. And a lot of people just want to hear from themselves. So I'm just I just want to put it out there that, you can hear from somebody like you around the world discussing things that you like. And that's a thing that can happen. So I do that with the website. On social media, so we're talking Twitter, Instagram, TikTok now. I'm usually sharing podcast tips for podcasters because I run into so many podcasters because of the directory. I see things that people could do better. And then I also talk about the podcast industry because I've always been a reader. So that's been my part of like what I talk about online is like the industry, what's coming, what's been. So, for people that are new, and kind of just understanding like what's going to be coming because of what's been for podcasts and getting people to understand that and tap into the industry because a lot of people are independent. So it's just like, I'll just create from the outside. And it's like, it's kind of fun if you do it from the inside and create with others also.
And that's the thing I think that's so important that when we met, when I literally had just started, because yours was like the first sort of discovery platform where I could go and actually find out about podcasts where people who look like me. And it was just like, oh, this already exists. This is fantastic. Because I had been so annoyed prior to finding you about like, I just want to know what the podcasters who look like me are. And there was nothing available. And because like the thought process behind it is just a bunch of white guys who are talking about whatever they feel like are the only people who have a voice online. And so to find you, it really helped because it gave me a chance to learn from different folks. And I've had it's as a result, like my library is filled. But what are some of the things that you've sort of seen over the last few years? I feel like we met like in 2016. So what have you seen that's sort of changed as you've evolved Podcast in Color?
I've just seen like so much money come into podcasting and how like that's building a structure that not everyone sees. And that can be like with any industry. Like a lot of people didn't understand the tech industry, in California when it was building, like the power that it was hold from, the valley and those kind of things. So I feel like that's what we're seeing in podcasting, but it's not necessarily only a certain place, as it was like just in New York. But as the money started coming in, it more expanded everywhere instead of like only attaching itself to one city and one power for a spot. It's more been power for companies. And so I feel like overall, I'm just seeing like the exchange of, okay, the Apple Podcast app and understanding that to, there's way more podcast apps and they're being bought and different companies are trying to do more to now where it's kind of like, what will podcasting look like in a few years if everybody has paid subscription programs like, how music apps did? And what will that look like for an independent podcast or like, should you be signing up for more things or not? So mostly like I'm just into the reading of what's about to happen because it's like if a couple $1 billion can be spent in 1 year to try to like, make the podcast industry bigger, I would say like, there's going to be some bigger changes that we're not prepared for coming that nobody's really thinking about because there's just too much money in there for, there not to be things that we're not thinking about.
Wow. And what do you think about that? I mean, we see some podcasters get these huge deals. But for the happy independents like myself, where do you think we're headed just from what you're seeing?
I feel like we're having a good time. Like a lot of people I used to know that were doing independent podcasts, but like we're learning, what they were doing, learning the editing, learning the little details, are working in podcasting now or starting their own companies and figuring out how to be funded as their own company. And I feel like that's what I like hope to push people to see is like podcast IP and what that means, why so many people are getting into podcasting and how to be able to work with bigger companies. Because a lot of podcasting started with like, oh my God, big companies know. And it's like, well, we loved it when Issa Rae got with HBO. We love it when all these things are coming out on Amazon Prime Video. So like, with Sylvie's Love and the rest of these things. So it's like, it's not necessarily that. It's like, who do you want to bet on? And, where will your project do the best at? And I think that's what podcasting has to get to, like how movies and TV and books are in a way of just thinking, where does your project belong and trying to get it to that place.
Because I think it's interesting because I think there is sort of this weird backlash because, you see podcasts, get the bigger deal and, go exclusively to Spotify. And I think for some folks, they're like, yeah, I'm not selling out to the man. And, it's much more about the fact that, like, you can turn this into a real business where you can actually control it. And I think that's something far more unique than anything that we could have had, 5, 6 years ago, where, like, yeah, you can control your own business, but if you partner, yeah, you can become that Issa Rae who, like, puts out content that you want to see and controls it.
Exactly. Like she basically used a lot of that. And she even used like the last season of Insecure. They were starting a podcast with Tenderfoot in Atlanta, which was like a huge thing to do something with Donald and know like you're going straight to a true crime podcast, people from HBO, and like, being able to have some type of budget to be able to do something like that. It can just expand your ideas. It doesn't stop her from leaving HBO or like doing a lot of other things. I feel like I wish more people researched Issa Rae because it's like every other month, like if you really look, she has something going on, a new company, like a new project. You're something we hadn't thought about in a couple of years. She had signed and it's coming completed. And I'm just like, most people aren't seeing like the how you can build with other people. And I hope that we are able to see that in podcasting. But I'm very much like, no, you should have friends just like they do in the music industry where you can call and say, we should make this together. And, it's like, all right, let's figure out how to make this together. Because that's what kind of things, those are the kind of things that are making money in podcasting. Like people are just having a couple of ideas. It's a couple of people together. And that's what's being bought by other people. Like the Breaker, there was a Breaker podcast app that Twitter just bought like a few weeks ago. And it's like, that was acquiring 2 people. So it's like, you can have an idea right now and really just kind of work on it in a small way. And because podcasting is growing in a different way from other industries while it's growing, a lot of people are looking for people to create the different things that are needed and just absorb it into their app or company in a way instead of them having to create everything they need to do in podcasting.
Because I think it's different because you're no longer just buying a voice, you're buying a creator. And I think that's different
Yes.
than what we've seen in other industries.
And that's what a lot of people have to come around to, because when we started, it was more about a voice. Like you have to think about last year, June of 2020, when there was a big thing with, Black creators, are you paying them and that kind of thing. And a lot of stuff came out in podcasting that, people that worked for different companies felt shorted, that they were only a voice and they weren't offered any IP and all kind of things because they didn't know that was an option. And other people around them were more artists and got to more control over their shows. And POC people were seeing that they didn't have any IP or control of their shows, like the conversation afterwards. So I feel like a lot of what I do just personally is like seeing holes like that and making sure I bring it up. So when new people follow me or like, new conversations happen, I can always make sure to say like podcast IP conversations have happened, podcast contracts conversations have happened in free ways that you can go look at. And people that have made money have told you like the exact 1, 2, 3 of what to do and what not to do. So you don't have to be in situations where a year or 2 later you feel shorted or like they didn't give you enough money or didn't hit the bonuses that they said they were going to hit before because that wasn't in the contract or something. Like it's just a bunch of craziness in podcasting. So it's like, no, you really have to look at the details of things because of what podcasting is in a new industry and how every industry will try to take advantage of people to a certain extent. And knowing more and like understanding how that is.
Time. Right.
I'm sorry?
It's a tale of all the times. There's always going to be someone who's going to try and take advantage of someone who doesn't know. So like now that you're armed with those details, you can be better in your negotiations. What are some of the ways that you've seen folks who have been able to make money podcasting without it having to be like, oh my gosh, I have to sell $1 gazillion to a huge network?
I like to use the example of Therapy for Black Girls with Dr. Joy. She's located in Atlanta. I feel like it's just an easy kind of thing to use. She had 1 million listens within, I would believe it was the first 6 or 7 months. And really, she just thought of a plan. At that point, she was working for a college. And so she saw the point in like college kids and college women and how much they share things, and really was able to turn that into like her podcast spreading. And then now I believe we're 3 or 4 years in. She's now working with iHeartRadio and Conan's team to do more in podcasting. So they bought some part of like her podcast or invested in it in some way. And now she works with them. So I'm like, there's a way to do this 3 or 4 years on your own if you're actually looking at scaling up, which is like, what does that look like in podcasting? What does that look like for you? Which is where consult to me comes in for podcasting. But it is there to scale up if you're doing niche ideas and things like that, and what you can be doing. A lot of people thought it's like have a podcast, have live shows, done. And Dr. Joy like said, okay, I'm going to have a podcast and I'm going to build an online resource so people are really like looking into this and finding me. And that's why she kept going viral over and over, because she was like, it's a resource. I'm gonna make sure I'm putting this out on Instagram. The better graphics I have, the more shares. You can just tell she kind of played with different things. Like, I don't believe she's been on stage at conferences and things, but I've never seen a Therapy for Black Girls live show yet. So there's more people that think like live shows are the way that you're going to go for money. And Joy kind of was like, all right, I'm getting to a point where I can use my numbers to hit money, and then I can get ads, host read ads on my, podcast, and kind of just a different path for things. So I think a lot of people don't see the different paths you can go to make money in podcasting. And I wish more people saw that. For Dr. Joy, that was, money from ads. A lot of people are doing it in Patreon, and a lot of people are like, should I have one? And it's like, but what kind of information are you sharing? Are there 100 people or, so commenting and you're having a conversation? A good 20, 30 of them might pay, a few dollars a month, and then you're able to monetize and do more, with the service or different things. So I just think it's really about thinking out of the box of podcasting, and that path to like the 1, 2, 3 of how this works isn't here in podcasting. And I hope it's never here in podcasting, because I love seeing the different ways that people are able to like make it work.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. It's that, you can utilize it in a lot of different ways, and how you can monetize that is really up to you. Like I don't know, for some reason, I never kind of wanted to do a Patreon, and now I'm kind of like, well, maybe I should, because I get these comments from people like, oh my gosh, I learned so much, and I'm like, okay, and I'm like, share it with your friends, but I think I've always sort of been sort of hesitant to be like, okay, let me find a million ways to monetize the podcast.
That's how I do a podcast in color. I need to do better, but that's how I started out. Because I'm just like, I don't want to start with the plan of like, it just has to be a certain way, and then I'm stuck. I kind of want to fill out, do I want to do it? How long do I want to do this before I start monetizing? And then people feel some type of way when you take it away.
Right. Yeah, I've been on the fence for, I'm now 4 years into it, and it's fun, and I don't know, maybe because I think it'll take some fun away from it, because I'm a marketer by trade, and so like if I decide, okay, like I'm going to treat the podcast like a client, then what does that mean for me? Is this no longer fun for me? Now it's another job.
Yeah. You're like, now I'm just signing into my second job instead of something that was fun for me to have conversations.
Yeah, so I sit on, I still sit on the fence, and who knows? Although granted, I'm gonna do this crazy thing for 29 days, so maybe I will be like, you know what, Laura, this requires a Patreon. What are some of the pitfalls that you've seen some podcasters make? Because I'm sure, obviously, you've seen people kind of come and go over the years. What are some things that people should try and avoid?
I usually, like, when I started consulting, I would say the first thing I would start off a consult with, or like say at different points, was like, just so you know, you're not the read. Like, you're gonna have to actually try at things. That can be a hard thing, because when you're used to seeing somebody that's successful that only posts one link a week to their podcast, and they're one of the top podcasts, you tend to think like, oh, okay, I'm gonna go talk mess online, and then just do this, put it once a week, and people are gonna mess with it. And it's like, that doesn't happen like that.
Be realistic is what you say.
Yeah, so being realistic.
The reasons have been on for years, and they have a very specific niche.
Yes, and they were the first.
You can't replicate that. They were the first.
when you're in there and you're the first to hit on something, like that can be yours, like when an idea hits. But I feel like it's that looking at how big podcast teams are. I feel like a lot of people don't understand how many people it takes to create different types of podcasts. So they put a lot on themselves. And it's like sometimes if you look at a podcast that you like, and you look at how many people are working behind it, it can kind of give you a better idea of like, okay, I shouldn't be as hard on myself because that person has 4 people working with them on an episode,
Right.
throughout the process, and it's me. So I have to think, to just have this works for me, and like, how do I make it work for me doing it one person compared to like how you said, that you have an editor now. I know some people will pick up a social media person just for a couple of weeks to set a plan that they can do. And just different people you could involve throughout the process, depending on how much of a budget you have to work with.
Yeah, I mean, whenever people ask me like, should I start a podcast? I'm like, well, do you have something to say? Or is it just because you see that everybody and their mom has one, so you think you should just kind of jump in the pool too?
Exactly.
And it's also like, if you like, could you interview a bunch of people? Like, would you be comfortable doing that? Because those are the things that people are always like, oh yeah, it's so easy, because like, oh, yours sounds so easy, and I'm like, yeah, but like I've also been a moderator for like 10 years on panels, like right, so like I can interview people. It's not like just randomly out of the blue you can do this. And oftentimes I think folks assume that you can do and you can do even more. So I think it's just folks have to understand that this is not an easy thing to do, even though
No.
some people make it look easy.
Yeah, and that's the thing about it. If anything, be glad that some people make it look easy, because it is not.
It's just like it takes it's a job. It's another job.
It's a skill. There are many skills involved, and like keeping a conversation going, keeping people interested for an hour of your conversation. Like, that's a lot. I mean, a lot of people, we would be on, the phone for 15 minutes and then you'd be like, I gotta go. Because I'm done with the conversation. So when you think about like how long you'll do a phone call compared to weekly, like how many people are putting out content and you're listening to the whole content, that's a lot that a lot of people don't consider, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I'm 4 years in, and my schedule is still kind of whenever I feel like. I mean, it's every week, but some weeks it's 2 episodes, some weeks it's 5 episodes, some weeks it's 1 episode. And I break all the podcasting rules because I'm always like, I don't want this to be a job. So, and if I follow my rules, like if this was a client, then I would do things drastically differently. But I think the thing about it is you have to actually enjoy what you're doing with this. But for those folks who want to sort of turn this into a job, like, what are some of the things that you would recommend them actually doing first?
Really, I feel like there's a lot of options right now to kind of like that people are trying to teach other people how to do jobs. Like right now, there's Catherine St. Louis that works at Neon Hum. She's doing a class for people who want to learn editing in podcasting, because that's a job that's needed, and more POC people are needed in that space to edit podcasts. So she's doing a thing like, I've been doing this. What I'm going to teach you is how to hone this skill so you can go off to get a job. And a lot of people are creating programs like that now. Like they've went to their jobs after the whole thing of so June 2020 and like racism. Are you really helping the Black people that work there? Do you really want Black people at your company, and that kind of thing? So a lot of people are putting money where their mouth is at different companies, and trying to recruit in different ways, trying to work with different people. And it's kind of just looking into that. And that's one thing I really liked, especially in the last 6 months. A lot of people have put more effort into, let me do this free class, or let me do this class where I can make it deeply discounted, and that kind of thing. And looking at those kind of things and how can the return on any amount of that money would be a full-time job. So it might be worth, paying for it also.
Hire the people who know what they're doing. That's the key thing.
We're so excited to have Soho Works as the sponsor for the 29 Days of Magic campaign. You know, they're designed by Soho House, and their workspaces to help creative thinkers, businesses small and large, connect, collaborate, and grow. And it's where I'm recording all the episodes of 29 Days of Magic. It's a safe, wonderful and collaborative experience. I'm currently in the Brooklyn location, but they have locations, one else in New York City, in the Meatpacking District, one in LA, 5 in the UK, and they give you that kind of home away from home feeling with all the tools, technology, equipment to help you do your best work. Like I said, it's an amazing location, feels safe. I've been able to meet some really awesome people, which you haven't been able to do a lot because of the fact of COVID. So it's been a wonderful experience being able to record here and help build community. So if you want to find out more information about it, please go to sohoworks.com to get more information and tell them I sent you. And now back to the show.
Looking back on what you've had to do now, what's been one challenge with managing all of this and sort of being this go-to resource that you never knew that you would run into and didn't think you'd get out of, but you found your way through it?
I feel like I'm in the middle of that place right now. I'm just trying to figure out my way. Yeah. To what I'm doing, but I want to monetize it in some type of way, but not so that I'm a walking ad. I don't want everything I post for people to be like, is this an ad? Because for a lot of influencers of things, they'll post things they like and everybody's just like, that's an ad too. So I want that space to be able to be paid to talk about things, but also post things and not have people think everything I do is an ad for something else or somebody's paying me to post things. And I want to figure out, I don't want to work in, a lot of people ask me to host podcasts or do front facing things. And it's really been my hope and my dream to do behind the scenes things. So what I'm thinking about doing is just maybe taking some other classes and just thinking about what I want or the things that I can build in podcasting that a company might like or that kind of thing. Cause I'm the jobs I've interviewed for before now, I'm the things I do online, and for some reason you all won't hire me, and nobody's giving me anything on why you won't hire me. So I was I'm either gonna have to kind of with Podcast in Color create my own space or create my own job somewhere. So right now I'm just kind of looking at what company would I want to work for, and what's the space that I could fill for them, and how can I tell them this is what you need, and I'm the person to do that for you. So I'm just in this space of do I want to do all of that to work for a company? And are they going to do right by me if I do all of that? Or should I be creating my own thing and just working for myself? But I'm I don't know. At the beginning of this conversation, I was saying, I love a 9 to 5 or the person, working 6 to 1 or, those kind of things. I like the energy of working with other people and having a conversation and those kind of things that can spark off because you're in a room of people and the conversations. I'm I like that. I want to deal with somebody with a budget that can just do the things that I'm asking them to do. I don't want to have to think of things and then think, okay, now I have to figure out how to get this funded. So this could be a great thing. How to pay for this? Right. Exactly. I just wanted a couple of years maybe without that step of that I don't have to think of money for everything that I think of that could be done in podcasting. That's my hope at this moment.
Well, you've put it out into the universe, so now it's going to happen. That's
we'll see. I'm putting energy towards it. So that's
manifest it, y'all. That's what you got to do, and say it. And I think I can think of a lot of folks who need your help off the top of my head. We'll talk after. Because I think there is just unique space right at this moment because it's necessary. Whenever people ask me, obviously when June happened, I got lots of white folks asking, hey, Laura, how can I get more people? How can I learn more? And I'm go to Podcast in Color and search. Because you will find amazing voices that are POC right there. Really easily. This is not that difficult. And I think at this moment, having voices that understand the landscape of where we sit and the knowledge that comes with it is our kind of corporate imperatives going forward. So I'm rooting for you to get where you want to go. Uh, and thinking about all that stuff, what do you think you'd probably tell 21-year-old Barry?
I probably would tell 21-year-old Barry, like, you're always forward thinking, and the thing that you're gonna do hasn't even been really created in a way yet. So you just got to keep working toward it. Like, I think a lot of things I've always wondered, like, would I find an industry for me, or like, should I just do customer service stuff forever? And savings and just until I can't anymore. And so I feel like I would just tell 21-year-old Barry, like, it's coming. You just have to keep reading and work towards something, instead of just wandering around and hoping something jumps up at some point.
Just keep going. Yeah, I mean, that's the
Going.
thing. And you can make your own way, like you're doing right now. You're making your own way. Like who knew what podcasting would become 10 years ago, 15 years ago? Like it wasn't a thing. So building your own side to the universe is always so very important. Especially at this unique moment where we're all kind of like, oh my God. Speaking of which, we've obviously survived 2020 and 2021. What in the world do you do for self-care?
Currently, I'm in a hotel room, so if it's echoey, I'm sorry, but I live with other people. So like it had been 10, 11 months where I was like, all right, I'm going downhill. And so I decided to come and get a hotel room for 3 nights. And it felt like a vacation of vacations. Like in my mind, my stress level is low, like I'm at the beach or something. And I'm doing nothing but just sitting in another room. So my self-care has been sitting in another, like paying for a hotel room, even though I was like, is it worth the cost? I mean, I have my own space, I have my own room, and and I was just like, you know what, I'm gonna do it. And it has been more than worth the cost. It has been like so worth it. I was like, just not having to talk to anybody unless I choose to talk to someone. After 10 months of being around people all the time, even though they're my family, I love them. I was just like, it feels so good. I just don't even know how to explain, like hearing not normal noises and just being in not the place that I've been, because I've been really strict. I've rarely I'm big on my room. Like I'm just one of those really deep ones that was like never leaving the house and all of that. And I'm like, being in this hotel, I'm like everybody living in the world, all of y'all traveling to different the different things, and I don't understand why. But I'm just trying to stay safe, and try to stay mentally here, because I mean there was some months at the end of the year where I was just like, "Oh Jesus, I'm just trying to make it. Like how am I gonna make it through this thing?" I just feel like I'm inside. I do nothing. I talk to nobody. And everybody else is outside. And it's like, you got to stop being so dramatic. Not everybody is outside. So I'm very happy about tomorrow, which is January 20th. And I tell people this feels like, when I saw other people raised by parents that didn't have any control, so they had to raise themselves in a way. So it was just a lot going on. I was like, that's what it feels like America has been under, just no parental supervision, nobody really, taking parents. Things. Nobody is signing their things so you can go to school and go to the, on a bus to the different trips or anything. Nobody is caring. So I feel like I don't care. As I was saying, I hope somebody cares. Smile. That's what I'm looking for, is the people that care. And they were like, care? And I'm like, someone that takes care of business. That's what I'm looking for. Somebody that does their job. That's all I'm asking, because that's been a lot to ask for. So I'm looking for somebody that doesn't mind doing their job and is actually looking forward to doing their job. That's what I'm looking for.
That is the most eloquent description of why I'm very excited about Joe and Kamala. Well, anyone I've heard. I just want someone who cares and wants to do their job. Literally, that's it. I'm actually gonna tweet that. I will credit it. Because that's literally that's the thing. Honestly, you're so right about it. It has felt like it is like Lord of the Flies almost, where there's no parental supervision and everyone's just fending for themselves. There's some pockets of good people, but there are a whole lot of bad people, and bad people oftentimes can make people's lives far more difficult, because they can be mean to people, and people will be like, well, that is strength, and so I want someone who's strong, so that's why I'll follow along. And that's how we got to this.
And we get to the circle of hell. Everything can be worse.
Deep circle of hell.
This whole situation taught me, as an adult, everything can be worse. We always think we've seen the worst. It's history we read about that's so bad and all of that. But I'm like, nah. Now I feel like this was like a little tap on the forehead. Like, don't forget, you still living, and everything can always be worse. No facts.
Exactly. There is a global pandemic outside, so things could be worse. It could kill you. There is literally a plague outside. It is like the zombie movie. But yeah, I would agree with you. I am very much looking forward to, like, someone who cares, who wants to do their job. And I did the same thing a few months ago, and actually a couple weeks ago as well, to kick off the new year. I went to a hotel for a couple of days just to, like, be somewhere else and get room service, and it did wonders. So I highly recommend doing that. Take some time for yourself, because it has not been easy at all for anybody. And I think we have to, give ourselves enough grace to be like, yeah, like, I need a moment. I need some time away. And however I can make that happen, whether it's a night at a hotel, a week at a hotel, you know,
Make
if
it
you feel
happen.
safe enough to fly somewhere where you can, like, be isolated and, like, do what you need to do, then I'm like, you gotta do it, because this has not been easy at all.
No. I feel like, and I'm like, I don't even have any children or anything. Like, I don't have anybody I necessarily have to talk to every day. So I can't even imagine from people who have had children. I'm like, I hope that these people have partners that are giving them breaks. Like, maybe you go to a hotel or you go to your parents' house basement for a couple of nights and then I do it. Like, we both get a break. Like, I hope parents at this point are thinking about ways of, like, how can we both, get a few days break or something, and support the other person to not be going crazy during all this.
Yeah, it's a crazy thing. I mean, some of my friends are single moms, and I just pray for them because I don't even know how they're managing. Because it's just you would have never imagined that this would be the way that we'd be living, and it's bizarre on so many levels. Uh, and we just have to navigate it, and try to be as kind to ourselves as humanly possible, because obviously this has not been easy at all. And we hope for a brighter day going
Yes.
forward. So last question for you: do you have a give and or an ask of the audience?
I would say an ask would be, if you want to learn more about podcasting and like the podcast industry, you can follow me on social media. That's what I talk about, or ask me questions on social media. I do answer them. And that's like Twitter and Instagram. I'm big on that. Facebook, I don't like their message system, so I don't always go into that. Like, I haven't combined my Instagram and Facebook like that. So if you're, tapped into podcasting or want to know more about it, that would be like Podcast in Color. And I try to tell people that in a way that it's like, if you're following me on social media and it's Podcast in Color, it's going to be all podcast stuff. Like, you don't see none of my personal things. I'm not like trying to make you like bring you into my life or anything. I'm just talking about podcast stuff. So to me, like, that's a break for a lot of things.
That's your brand. That's your brand.
That. And I'm like, I don't like to combine those things. I like for when people come to Podcast in Color, they can escape and we can just talk about podcasts. We ain't got to talk about politics. We don't have to talk about none of that. We can just talk about what you like and like what you're doing and different things like that. So if you're looking for a break and you just want to talk about something that is not the other things around you, that's what you can come to me.
Awesome. And of course, we will put all the details. As I said, Barry is a must follow on Twitter and Instagram. I have learned so much from her, not just for finding other really dope podcasts, but interesting opportunities and things I should be doing better as a podcaster. So she is a phenomenal resource, and I encourage you to follow her. Barry, it was so nice to have you on the podcast. You're just a fountain of great information. And I love to see you shine. So thank you so very much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate this. When you asked me, I was like, of course, I'll do that. Like, no problem.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And that is our show.